What's going on, everybody? It's your boy C-Zar, and in this video we will be talking about XRP. There's some interesting developments that have been taking shape really over the past year, but over the past week especially. Some interesting things that'll bleed into the end of this year, the end of the cycle, and the bear market as well. I want to talk about some thought-provoking concepts by the end of this video. If that sounds good to you, hit the like button, subscribe. We will be getting into the price action as well, talking about the charts in the second half of this video, though. Okay, so let's get started. Let's get into it. Okay, let's talk about what's interesting, what's got my attention at least right now. Right, I made a video recently talking about this exact thing here, where Grayscale launched their first multi-crypto, the first ever multi-asset crypto ETF in the US. It says ETF, but it's an ETP. ETFs are ETPs, like whatever. It's the same thing, man. It really is the same thing. So cool. Call it an ETF. It is an ETF, man. XRP has its first ETF, and it's the first multi-crypto asset, multi-asset crypto ETF. Bitwise was trying to get it, but it looks like Grayscale took the cake, and they're the ones that have been here for a while. They've probably been pushing longer, and they've probably got more capital to grease the palms. GDLC is the ticker for this ETF, ETP, and it's offering exposure to 5 of the largest and most liquid crypto assets: Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, Solana, and Cardano. So XRP does officially have an ETF, right? It's just a partial ETF. It's a basket, and that's pretty cool because not only is it a ETF that includes XRP, but it's also the complete composition of the United States Crypto Strategic Reserve that Donald Trump and the boys established earlier this year. So if you want to invest in the United States crypto fund, this is a good way to do it, right? And I'm sure there's going to be other ETPs that come out that are just like this. Literally, look up ETP, look up ETF. They're like the same thing. They literally are the same thing. So don't let the terminology get you confused. This is not just the exciting thing here, right? What this implies, and what Garlinghouse said, Brad Garlinghouse, Ripple's CEO or founder. What is he the CEO? He's the founder. Says XRP ETF is inevitable before year end as demand surges, right? And we know that Garlinghouse and Trump are buddy buddy. Garlinghouse is probably a large reason as to why XRP is in the strategic crypto reserve to begin with, and there's definitely some affiliation with Ripple Labs and Trump affiliated companies, not just Donald Trump, but Eric Trump, Donald Trump Jr. Some companies they're investing in XRP as well, and in Ripple. So there's some, what's the word I want to look for? Affiliation is a good word. Yeah, affiliation there with these. So if he's saying this, he's got people in high places. He's got friends in high places that know things. If he's saying that it's inevitable before year end, if this was some rinky-dink analyst like myself saying that it's inevitable before year's end, okay, take it with a grain of salt. It might not happen. But if Garlinghouse is saying this, he probably means this. He knows something that we don't know, but he's letting us know. You know what I mean? So, and the interesting thought that this provoked in my head is that you read this, analysts forecast up to $8 billion of inflows within the first year. I was reading another article that said Grok was predicting it'd be $20 billion in the first year. Whatever, however much it is, billions and billions of dollars of institutional money and retail money and traditional money coming into XRP through this on-ramp, which will be an ETF and the ETP that's been released. This amount of money, I think, will create not just a surge in the price, but also stability, right? So by the end of the year, if this ETF is approved and it's inevitable before the year end, then what that implies, at least in my opinion, is we're probably going to move up into this ETF. We're probably going to see the price move up into the ETF. You buy the hype, which the hype's being laid out. Garlinghouse just laid out the hype for us. You buy the hype, and then you sell the news. Once the ETF comes out, you sell the news. Not financial advice, not a financial advisor. I'm not saying that once the ETF comes out that we're going to drop 100%, but I would bet a lot of money on it that we do, yeah. Bitcoin, on the day that its ETF came out, the very first ETF that ever existed for Bitcoin, and it finally was listed, we dropped from there. I forget how much we dropped. I want to say we dropped like 15% or 20% over like a 2-week period. We dropped, right? We had a high, we surged up on the day of the listing, and then we dumped down. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if we had similar results with XRP. Maybe we dump a day before, a week before the listing. Maybe it's a day or a week after. Maybe it's right on that day. But I would expect most of the growth will happen between now and going into that time where the ETF is approved, which will be by the end of the year. Is that going to be in October? Is it going to be in December? When the ETF gets listed and we dump down, does that mean that it's the end of the bull market for XRP? No, there's going to be more growth to be had after that, but we just might see a little bit of volatility, right? Bitcoin still grew after its ETF was listed. It just dropped for 2 weeks and then it continued to grow. So I don't know. XRP might drop and consolidate for 2 months or a month or a week or who knows how long it is. But I would expect we're in that buy the hype phase right now. Sell the news event coming later this year. Okay, and probably if I'm guessing right, I think we get this ETF in December, but maybe it's in October. I don't know. I don't know what the timelines are for it. It could be October, November maybe, but sometime in October, November, December is what I would guess, after we've had a little bit of a rally up. Okay, so expect it'll be a really nice tradable moment right there for anybody watching or paying attention, or more likely it'll be a really bad moment for people to FOMO in, right? Not financial advice, not a financial advisor, but once the ETF is listed and everybody's going crazy because XRP has an ETF, maybe chill, right? When Ethereum had an ETF listed, when Bitcoin had an ETF listed, it was not good for either of them, at least in the short term. For Ethereum, for more than just the short term. But what I'm thinking beyond this stuff, beyond just the end of the year here, going into the end of the cycle, going into the beginnings of the bear market, and really throughout the bear market, with this amount of inflows taking place within the first year, you have to imagine that there's going to be institutional money, not just investing in the height of this bull market, but institutional money's smart, right? They're very, very smart. Retail money is going to be investing at the height of this bull market. Institutional money is going to layer in the depths of the bear market next cycle. So what does that mean? Think about it, right? What does that mean? We look at XRP here on the price charts, and you can see that for the last couple of cycles that we've had, if we were to take this, let me just see here. You know, the very first high that we had back in 2013 down to 2014 here, we dropped 95% there from an all-time high to that low. From our cycle high in 2017, 2018 actually, in January, we dropped down 96%, 95, 96%, even bigger drop there, bigger move up, of course, so you had a bigger drop. From the last cycle high to low, we had a more modest drop. That was about an 85% drop. My thoughts are this, right? We're going to see an even more tame drop than we saw last cycle. We're going to have more growth, and already I think we're very much on the path to see dramatically higher expectations from a low to a high. The cycle low last cycle to the high, we grew 1,700% essentially. From this cycle low to where we are already, we're at about 1,150%. I would expect that by the end of this cycle, you guys, we do an overall 100x or more for XRP. I genuinely think we will. At a bare minimum, somewhere at $20, but I really think we'll be above $40 by the end of the cycle. And even that, even at $20, hell, even at $10, we're dramatically eclipsing last cycle. What I'm getting at here is even with the added growth that we will experience this cycle, I'm anticipating that because of this on-ramp for massive inflows from institutional and traditional money to come into XRP, there's going to be a more tame bear market because people are going to be layering in. Smart money is going to be layering in droves at these new lows, wherever they might come in, these higher lows during the next bear market. So just thinking ahead here, if you're looking at the prior bear markets and you're expecting an 85% drop or more, I don't think we're going to get that, which that's pretty exciting. Let's think about XRP like this, right? Let's say it only goes to $20 by the end of the cycle. I think we're going to go a lot higher than $20, but let's make sense out of it. From a high to a low, I'll leave these percentages up. I want to leave them up. I know it makes a lot of noise, but we're going to be looking up here anyway, so don't worry. I want to have the percentages. Maybe I can move them. Okay, let's move them down so that they're not in our way so much. We can move them up. That's the fibs. We'll try and get that one there. There we go. Yeah, we'll move them out of the way, and then this one we can just delete because we don't need the growth. Okay. The minimum target that I would have by the end of the cycle, the absolute most minimum target that I could have would be up here. Okay, that's about a 9x away from here. Okay, if we were, it's almost a 10x in fact, $27. If we were to top off here, if this is the cycle end at the golden ratio, the 1,618, and we were to drop less than 85%, right? That's my assumption. Less than 85%. That would imply then that our cycle low for the next bear market will likely not even be at the prices that we're at now. We'll only be at higher prices. Now, if it's somewhere between 96 and 85%, my guess would be it's somewhere literally just below 85%, just beyond 85%, just below 90%. Right here, we'd probably find support back at this prior area of resistance. Does that make sense? Could we do that? If we stopped at $27, could we drop there? I think that makes sense. I don't think we'd see as dramatic of a 96% drop If we saw a larger drop than 85%, that goes against my theory that there's going to be more stability because of all this money that's inflowing. But it's still within that range that we've seen, and it's pretty similar to the last bear market we had, which, in all fairness, was pretty tame because the bull market was pretty tame as well. So maybe we do have a little bit more growth, but still, 88% compared to 96 and 95% is a dramatic difference. It's a very dramatic difference. Look, 88% at $3 from this same high. If we were to go down to 95%. We're all the way down here at $1.31. That's more than a 50% difference just with that added percentages, because as you go down, negatives are pretty damn powerful. That's only if we're at $27. If we're all the way up at $67 or $40 by the end of the cycle, I think $40 is possible, because if I remember correctly, yeah, the 2618 is right there. Let's just say this happens. An 85% drop or less would mean that we're only at $6.42 by the end of the next bear market, which would actually be the golden ratio for support of this relative of our last cycle's high to low. We'd be finding support there, 2618 to the 1618. That's actually a very common play in the dynamics of the fibs. An 85% drop or less, we might even find support at higher levels. Maybe we find support at the 1272 here, the 1414. It's very possible that XRP by the end of this next cycle, the end of the next bear market, we're barely below $10. We're at prices that are almost 3 times the price of what we're at now, right? That's what all this means. That's what I'm thinking here is looking forward, right? We try to do that. I feel like I'm not the best at looking forward, but if you try to think prospectively, you'll get there. You'll get somewhere. And it just stood out to me that what does all this mean, right? A lot of people are probably thinking right now, man, this is so bullish for the bull market. But I'm thinking a little bit past that. This is so bullish for the bear market. You're going to have, why do they call institutions smart money? Because they're smart, because they've been here. They've got a lot of experience. And with that experience, they know not to buy the hype phases of the bull market. They know to layer in during the bear cycles. And that's exactly what's going to happen. If you have institutional money in the first year layering out $8 billion, because I imagine that the first year after this ETF gets approved, we're going to be in the bear market at some point. They're going to be injecting XRP or inflows into XRP into this ETF, and thus XRP in the first year in the bear market. It's going to uphold things. I think I've made my point there. I want to wrap this up. Let's get into the price action. Okay, let's get into the targets. We didn't even get into what happens if it's at $70, man. At that point, you're not getting a less than $10 XRP, at least for multiple cycles from now. Crazy stuff. Crazy, crazy bullish stuff, you guys, okay? It's going to promote strength in the long term, because something else that I said in an earlier video is that ETFs, typically, if we actually look in history, throughout history, when United States ETFs get approved for commodities for various assets, it actually promotes stagnation or even a drop, even a bear market, right? I don't think it's going to happen for XRP. I do think we're going to get an immediate drop. I don't think it's going to be a long-term drop, because we're in the hype phase of crypto. We're in that hype phase of the markets itself. There's all kinds of good things going on right now. And crypto's 24/7. I don't expect it to last as long. But if you look at gold, you look at copper, you look at silver, you look at uranium. Anytime these ETFs have come out, there's been months, if not even over a year's worth of stagnation. Maybe not complete terrible downside. It's not like you're dropping tremendous amounts in that time, but you're stagnant. Because what happens after ETFs are approved, that's an on-ramp for institutions to get involved. They stagnate the markets, they manipulate the markets to allow them to get into it before things really go off, right? The retail gets in, they hear the ETFs are approved, so they buy the high, they get bored, they sell out with the boring price action, the lows that come in afterwards, where the investors, the smart money, the institutions come in and they buy up all the stock, right? I expect the same thing to happen with XRP, but in the bear market. I don't think once the ETF's listed that we're going to see stagnation. Not for a long time, at least. I don't know. Anything can happen, but I don't think so. Anyways, that's my daughter, if you guys hear her. Hold on real quick on that note. I'm like, please stop throwing things. She's throwing her toys on the floor, and which is fine. They're just little tiny toys, like, but and normally we actually throw them at each other, but I think she's just doing it to get my attention. Oh, she's just cleaning out her bike right now. Anyways, hey, knock it off, please. I'm trying to make videos here. Hold on. I'm gonna have to get up, you guys. We're gonna talk about the price action here in a second. Okay, never mind. She's gone. All right, XRP, XRP. She's like 3.5, so she's silly. Whenever we do move up higher, I very much do believe that the target areas that we're going to see by the end of the cycle are $27 to about $70 here, something in that range. Personally, I'm expecting $43 to $70 to be achieved. Man, I wish I could show you guys what she's doing right now because she's just freaking cute. But I don't want to show her face on the internet, right? That's her privacy that I'm trying to respect there. She can show her face when she's an adult, but not you know. There's some weirdos out there, right? I don't need that. She don't need that. You don't need that. Anyways, looking at the short-term stuff, getting on the daily time frame here. If you hear any background noises, that's just what it is. The RSI is finding support at the 50. Stochastics are bouncing off the 50. Or we're at an area to bounce off the 50 as well. I would expect that you find support in this area. The MACD is crossing above the 0. That's a very positive thing on the daily time frame. The last 2 times in a row that we crossed above the 0, let's actually just put lines right there, okay? Looking at this here, crossed above the 0 there, crossed above the 0 there, okay? Come on now. Whenever you crossed above the 0 here, actually we kind of moved down, but then inevitably you pumped. You had a nice pump relative to that. You were stagnant for about a week or 2, and then you pumped, okay? Here, whenever you had the cross, you crossed up. You were starting to right here. You didn't really make a move until about 5 days later, and then you had a very massive move up. We go back in time even further. The time before that, when you had a cross above the 0, you had a very massive move up, okay? So I think that this is just the floor, the precedence for more growth to come in a very short amount of time. We look at the 4-hour time frame, and I want to just look at the short-term stuff real quick. 4-hour stochastics makes me think that we might go a little bit lower. The MACD, who cares? The RSI, we're in an area where we might find support, but we could go lower. I want to look at the 1 hour. I wasn't going to do it, but I'm looking at it here. I don't think we go too much lower, man. I think we're at the low. I think this is it. We'll probably come back up by the end of the day. We'll see. I think XRP is going to be boring, right? I said that in the last video. I think we're just going to be in this area. That's a nice area to bounce from right there at the 382. We're probably going to be in this area, not above like 320 by the end of the week, not below $3 by the end of the week, but somewhere in this area going into the weekend, right? It's going to be boring weekend time, and then next week we should begin to rally. I think this bullish setup that we have on the daily time frame here and even the weekly time frame will exact itself starting next week and going into the end of the month and going into the end of the year. Remember that when the ETF gets approved, that will likely be a tradable moment. I'm not saying sell. I'm not saying sell the news. I'm just saying if you're looking to make a play, if you sell the news there, it'll probably work out for you. Okay. Now, if the price keeps going up, the worst thing to do is probably chase it. Just wait, because sometimes it does pump a little bit afterwards, and then it'll come back down. You can always buy back in where you sold, or you can wait and just let the kind of transactions take place and see if it does go lower. But I don't really have anything else I want to say. I'm thinking here that once the ETF is approved, we probably do see a little selling off, whenever that is, probably by the end of October or sometime by the end of the year. I got nothing else for you guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, hit the like button, subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Thank you all for being here. I'll see you on the next one, okay? Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.